Three civil society organizations are taking government to court to try and block the use of more coal in South Africa's energy mix. They want government to abandon plans to build 1,500 megawatts of new coal-fired power stations because of the likely environmental damage from that project. Now, this comes in the wake of outrage from some countries after the resolution from the recent COP26 climate summit that opted for a phasing down of coal instead of phasing it out. To talk more about this, we're joined by Gabriel Klaasen, a youth coordinator with the African Climate Alliance. That's one of the organizations that are going to the High Court now seeking this intervention. Gabriel, a very good evening to you. Welcome to News at Prime. You are basically arguing that government should not be allowed to add more coal to our energy mix because it causes more damage to the environment and endangers the lives of people. Do I have that correct?
Good evening, first of all, and thank you for having me. And you have that 100% correct. We don't believe that it's constitutionally correct to Section 24 of our Constitution, which states that we have the right to a healthy environment and well-being. The new procurement of coal, or the want for new coal, fossil fuel energy, is directly in opposition to that right that we as South Africans and those residing in South Africa have. And that is why we're calling to cancel coal, or this new procurement of coal. We don't believe that as it stands right now, we can get rid of the coal power plants that are currently existing because, we need that right now in our energy system. But the new procurement is definitely unconstitutional, should I say.
What then do you say, and this is, I'm sure, is a likely argument that you're going to face, that coal, the reality is easier to obtain and easier to use to get these stations going, especially in a country such as South Africa, where we're already dealing with power cuts?
So I think one thing we've realized and we've seen as individuals, before I'm an activist, I'm a community member. I grew up on the Cape Flats, and so I truly understand, a few of the hardships that we face. And then, of course, further than that, there are people who have faced far worse than I. And one thing that we're realizing, especially as young people in South Africa with our jobs, 70% of young people and more actually are unemployed. Coal is not the way forward. We see that there is a finite amount of coal in South Africa. And even though government would have you believe, DMRE specifically, would have us believe that coal is the future, that there's power in coal, that coal is king. In fact, we see the opposite there. We see that renewables are the future and alternatives are the future. And we need to start investing in that rather than living on this dream that is destroying our future and the future of the generations to come.
The Minerals and Energy Minister, Gwede Mantashe, is speaking, I think, as recently as last month as the COP summit was going on. He was asked about the coal question, I'm sure you've seen, and he says, yes, there's a need to bring on board more renewables, but it can't be an overnight switch to renewables because then we'd find ourselves in a situation similar to China, for example, that's currently battling power cuts. How long do you think is an acceptable enough time for South Africa to work on getting more renewables on board and phasing out coal? Do you think the 2050 target, as per the global accords, is realistic?
As we stand right now, and I definitely, first of all, want to say, I definitely think that the first step that environmentalists or anyone in the activist space looks at is the social and the economic aspect before we look at the environmental aspect, despite popular belief. We understand that, we can't afford more people to be facing not only load shedding, but the power cuts and the load reduction and blackouts that we're currently facing, especially those in informal settlements. And so what we do need, and what I think our minister was alluding to in a very minimalist way, is we need a just transition, which is an equitable transition from the current monopolized fossil fuel system that we have toward a more renewable and socially owned space, one that benefits people. But the only way that we get there is by ensuring that everyone is at the table and has an active place and participation at the table, not just sitting there with a smile on our face and a tick on a box that said we were present. I think that's kind of what's stopping us from reaching that target of 2050. Right now, we aren't at the table. The most affected aren't being heard. And it's just more profit over people rather than the other way around. And so I think we're looking toward it, but I don't think we'll reach 2050 at the way that we're in the rate that we are moving at the current moment.
We had a guest on News at Prime, I think it was this time last week, who was talking about coal, South Africa, and the environment. And one of the things she said is that the coal industry, we have to face this, she was saying that the coal industry is a massive provider of employment and employment opportunities, and that perhaps once we go towards renewables, we may have to relook issues such as upskilling those people, getting them prepared for those jobs. How much consideration do you pay to the jobs impact of South Africa in a post-coal energy situation?
So one thing I found quite amazing and lovely about the work that I do is that I don't work alone. I work hand in hand with communities and labor. And what we're realizing is that, you know, everyone genuinely wants us to move forward, whether that be, you know, in this direction or that direction, but people want to move forward. I think what we're realizing as well is communities understand. And when I say we, I mean the general public is starting to realize it as well. We understand where our energy is coming from. I mean, you're not going to complain if you can turn the switch on and have lights, you know, but we do understand where it's coming from and how it's affecting us. Frontline communities are understanding that firsthand. And so when it comes to jobs, when it comes to the way forward, I think what we're realizing and what communities are realizing is that there are ways forward. We do need this transition to happen. And it won't happen overnight, which is a great thing, because if it happens overnight, I don't trust it, because it's not been put to thought if it happens overnight. With this transition, people, young people, the biggest demographic in South Africa, will be capacitated and upskilled to move into a more green and environmental space where thousands, in fact millions of jobs await us and opportunities await us. And that doesn't take away from the jobs that are currently existing. People can be retrained. People can be put forward into the workforce. We don't hope to leave people behind. If we've left people behind during this just transition, you know, we've not accomplished our goal. You know, President Cyril Ramaphosa said that in 2020 at the SONA, leaving no African child behind. And yet the way that the government is moving is actually contradicting his words. And so I think moving forward, we have to move forward together.
And on moving forward then, you've now approached, I believe, the Gauteng High Court with your papers. What happens next with the case?
So as it stands right now, we are waiting for the 6th and the 7th of December, respectively, for NERSA and the Minister to put forward documents that we've requested and that they need to put forward on their end. Of course, there's a lot of logistics coming forward. We also are waiting and hoping for a court date pretty soon, but we do understand that our court system is a bit backlogged, which is completely natural, but also it's more so than usual. And so right now, as we move forward, we truly want to build the knowledge on the ground and kind of, you know, emphasize and amplify the voices of communities and their wants and their needs, which is for system change, which is for capacitation, which is for a future that is defined by an equitable and socially owned renewables and alternatives. So that's what we're hoping to do right now, is to kind of build that campaign and strengthen the movement on the ground as we await the litigation side of things to continue.
Gabriel Klaasen, good to speak to you. Gabriel is with the African Climate Alliance. Have a great evening further. Thank you.